Hi, Lionel Nelson here, and welcome to A Father's Note. This video, I am going to be discussing the purpose of sex. Now, I can tell you right now, get ready to be shocked because my views may be striking different from what the normal thought of what sex is for and what it is all about. So we hope that you get something out of it. Take a listen. Lionel Nelson here, and welcome to A Father's Note, promoting fathers through building men. It's so important that we always stand up for our fathers. We want you to know we're with you. We're standing behind you 110%. Okay, so the purpose of sex. Well, I would like to share my thoughts on what the purpose of sex is. But I first would like to share with you what the purpose of sex is not. Well, first of all, I want you to know that having sex is not sinful. Not at all. The only time that sex is sinful is when you violate the godly principles that God has given for sex. That is what makes it sinful. When you don't follow the guidelines in which that He has implemented, such as, i.e., first and foremost, you must be married in order to have sex. And if you don't have sex beyond that or outside of that, sex in itself is not sinful. 2, sex is not love. Okay. Now, many people, they have sexual relationships with, individuals who they don't love. They do it all the time, And also I want to point out that it should not be used to establish whether or not a person loves you. You can't do that. Also, let me add, you don't grow love through having sex. You can't do it, right? Number 3, the purpose of sex is not to procreate. Now, that's where a lot of you may find very shocking for me to say that, but absolutely. Now, procreation may be a result of sex, but in a sex in itself, it is not for the purpose of procreating. Nevertheless, because we know that many people, couples have sex all the time, but they don't have any children. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not a sin in itself, okay? Now, children may be the byproduct of having sex, but it is not the purpose of sex. And I want us to be clear, okay? Now, let me move on. Number 4, sex is not for making a living for yourself. What I mean by that, though we know that men and women both do it, okay? Whether or not it's through prostitution, whether or not it's through owning sex slaves or through pornography, at the end though, the purpose of sex is not for you to use your body to make a living, okay? And my last point I want to make of what sex is not for. Sex is not for sexual pleasure. Now, though it does produce a pleasure that those of us who are engaged in it, that we have an opportunity or the pleasure of experiencing, but it is not for the purpose of producing pleasure, okay? If you are having sex for the purpose of pleasure, I want you to know that your purpose is wrong, okay? In addition, when you are having sex for pleasure, and you just having sex, or let me point this out. If your purpose or your intent of having sex does not line up or does not fall in the guidelines in which that God has established, what you're doing is that you're opening yourself up to other unhealthy and unwanted connections and emotions that will later prove to be unfruitful in your life. So let me do a recap again. Number 1, as I pointed out, having sex is not sinful. It is not sin to have sex, only when you do it outside the guidelines and principles in which that God has established. Okay, number 2, sex is not love, all right? Number 3, the purpose of sex is not to procreate. 4, sex is not for making a living for yourself. And number 5, sex is not for sexual pleasures. So you're asking yourself then, what is the purpose of sex? Well, I'm glad you asked. The purpose of sex, in my understanding, according to Genesis chapter 2, verses 23 and 24, Adam points it out very clearly. And I'm here to tell you that the purpose of sex, first of all, I want to say, is to become one with the other individual. It is to become one with that woman whom you desire to have sex with. It is to become one with that man with whom you desire to have sex with. It is a form of unification. Now, this is where I'm clear. This is where I want to make this point clear. When you look at it in Genesis 2, verses 23 and 24, and it says that Adam says that this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave to his wife. They shall be one flesh. Now, first of all, she has to be your wife. She must be your wife. He has to be your husband before you have or engage in the act of sex. If you are engaging in the act of sex outside of marriage, then therefore that act makes sex a sin, but sex itself is not sinful. So now, the key word here, when we look at Genesis 2, verse 24, he says that when a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave unto his wife, they shall be one flesh. Now, the word cleave, as we know, if you look at the definition of the word cleave, it means to divide, to separate, okay, to crack, to slice. But then why would Adam use this word cleave if you're talking about unifying? Well, you have to go to the Hebrew language. Now, there are 5 words in the Hebrew language for the word cleave. 4 of those Hebrew words does mean to split, to slice, to divide, to cut, to crack. They do. But the one Hebrew word in this particular verse in which that Adam was referring to is a word that means to adhere, to stick, to cling, to join, in the word gum. In essence, you come together, never to be separated again. Now, I can go more into this here, but I don't want to do it in this video. But what happens is that, let me say this point, first of all, that when you have sex with someone, what you're doing, you're creating soul ties. Now, I come to the belief and to conclusion that sex is spiritual. Even though we enjoy it in our flesh, sex in itself is spiritual. God created it that way. So when a man enters into a woman, now we're already connected through flesh and blood, according to what Adam said, whether or not we're married or not. We're already connected. Men, we're already connected to the women in this world through flesh and blood. But it's when we enter into the woman, is when the woman allow a man to enter into her. That's when the unification comes, the joining together comes. And therefore, one man's spirit, he's entering to that woman, and that soul tie is being corrected, is being created there. So therefore, you can't separate it. The only thing that can separate it would obviously be the power of God. Now, as I stated, I can go on and on about this, but I want to share that with you. If you want a clear understanding of what the purpose of sex is, the purpose of sex is to unify with that woman, to unify with that man, to become one with them. Now, there are more scriptures that go along with this here. Why you don't divorce, why you don't commit adultery, why you don't fornicate. Okay, but I don't want to share it. I have to share that with you in another video, but we will. But what I want you to do, if you agree with me, let me know in the comments. If you disagree, let me know that too. Let's have an open discussion about it. I want to know how you feel about what I have said here, that the only reason that we are to have sex, okay, is for unification. Now, does pleasure come from it? Absolutely. Does children come from it? From having sex? Absolutely. Does love? Well, first of all, You should already be in love with the person if you want to. That means you're loving them for life. If you want to connect with them, if you want to join with them. But the purpose of sex is the only intent, and the purpose of sex is to become one with the other. Let me know what you think in the comments. And while you're there, please like this video, share this video, okay? And while you're there, also hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification button so that you will be notified every time that I upload a video on A Father's Note, where we believe in promoting fathers through building men. God bless.